Hey everyone, this is the bald, bearded bicyclist back with another road race commentary. This time it is week 3 at the BBC Sunday Series, and this is the Langford course. And this time I am riding with the B group. After last week's debate about where I should be, I decided B group was probably the best bet so that I can actually try some moves, and we'll see how it turns out. But we actually started this week with the C group, which I think, in my opinion, muddies the water a little bit again with where the Bs kind of fit in. And so we've already kind of done one kind of a half of a race lap, because we were originally told we should stick with the Cs for a few laps and kind of just practice. But the Bs still want to race. We ended up kind of accidentally dropping the Cs and some of the Bs at this point. We soft pedaled for about half a lap after a neutral lap, so you can see we're actually on the third lap. We did a full neutral with everybody, did kind of a half race lap, then a half soft pedal to see who would catch back on, and then we decided, you know what, we just got to race our race. And when we passed the start finish, we said, race on for real. And so we've got 2 more race laps this week. Was a big week for the Bs, and I stupidly decided to do 2 full warm-up laps. This loop is about 11 miles, and then we did the neutral, and then we're doing 3 race laps. So for me, I definitely overcommitted, and I didn't anticipate doing that many race laps or that many warm-up laps, and I did not bring enough fuel. So maybe that has to do with what my final result was. Maybe I'm just over fatigued from training, but we'll see how it all plays out. But just a tip for newer riders: if you've got a warm-up that you normally do, and you're riding, decide to go ride a warm-up with somebody else, don't feel pressured to do what they're gonna do. If they're gonna do an extra lap and you just want to stick to one, you do you. Don't feel bad if you just say, no, I'm just good. I'm good for this one. And nobody was really pressuring me, but for whatever reason, I was like, yeah, why not? I'll do a second lap. But I think it did bite me a little bit. Anyways, this is again, first true race lap here, and the wind played a big factor in this week again. You can see those arrows over there. It's a strong west to east wind, and so right now we're in a tailwind section, and we're obviously reaching high speeds. We're also going downhill. This is a very rolly course. There's a couple of bigger punchy rollers. I mean, I wouldn't say there's any major climbs. It's nothing sustained, but there's some hills that you can punch it pretty hard and have a good minute effort. So it keeps things interesting. And there were a few guys really animating this race and attacking from time to time. But you'll see it was kind of there were probably 4 people who kind of sat on the front the majority of this race. Me, Drew, Greg, and I think Will, who's a new guy to the BBC. And they all did really well. So this first turn was really rutted out. You can actually see that there's some major bumps here, so it was actually tough to brake going into this, but we were supposed to take that turn a little neutral because of the inside just being real pitted. I didn't want to cause any accidents there, having people try to attack through that turn. So every lap we would just kind of ease through and not hit it very hard out so everyone can get through safely. So again, here we've got a wind coming right to left, and I find if we were racing in the A field right now, everyone would be guttering on the yellow line so that everybody's doing the same amount of work. Now, I'm trying to stay just behind this guy, but off to the left so that I'm actually getting a little bit of a draft. You can see I'm moving up here to really let him catch that crosswind for me. I'm not doing a great job of staying in that position, but it's very easy to still get some draft when there's a right to left wind and people are sitting on the right side. So I'm going to zoom in. I noticed Greg is playing it up for the camera here, so I get to see some funny faces. Back camera is pretty fun to have on here too, so you either see that kind of stuff or the pain faces later in the race. So I'm glad I actually started at this race. I missed last week, but yeah, I pretty much every time we did this stretch, the people weren't really getting over to the left, and it's funny. And now I took the front, and I'm doing the same thing for whatever reason. I think I was just pulling through though, and I figured, I'd shelter those who want to be on the front as I filter back a little bit. But yeah, ideally with a crosswind, you'd be either on one side or the other to really make everybody behind you work just as hard. And then there's really no negative to being on the front because the people behind you are not getting a draft anyway. So. We got our little group of 8. We had actually dropped a couple of Bs along with the Cs on that little half race lap where we did some attacks, and this is what's left. Yeah, people were hitting these little rollers pretty hard. You can see 500, 600 watts to get over this. I'm a bigger guy too, though. For some of the smaller guys, this is a lot easier. So yeah, why not tire out the bigger guys? A lot of roadkill. Unfortunately, I didn't catch it on camera, but on the lap right before this, Drew, who's right in front of me, killed a poor little squirrel, and we'll pass the dead squirrel on this lap. But him and a friend were running back and forth, and on a downhill, so we were going over 30 miles per hour. And he cut right back under Drew's wheel, and luckily Drew kept going straight, did not swerve at all. I was a little worried. I gave him some room, but yeah, poor little guy did not make it. There's a little bit of a gap opening. I'm not really sure why. I just wasn't paying attention. Maybe might have been drinking some water. Other people were drinking water. Not a major deal. We're now on a downhill, and I usually end up hitting the brakes on downhills anyways. I'm kind of stuck in right here. I should have gotten to the left side so that I didn't have to hit the brakes and could have just carried speed. Again, I'm on the windward side, so I'm not really sure why I put myself over here, and now I'm kind of stuck. I think I realized it right around here and realized I couldn't really get back over, and I started chatting with the guys and saying we really should be on the other side. It doesn't make sense to be over here. Yeah, you can see that flag though. It was a pretty windy day. Sometimes you hit the gusts would be pushing us around too. And so Ray moves up really nicely on the left side, on the leeward, so it's not the not into the wind, and that's the way to do it. Take advantage of the people not guttering the wind. It would actually be very easy to move up, and then he probably should have gotten more on the yellow line so that again people wouldn't be able to draft. I can still kind of slot in to the left of this guy's wheel and get a bit of draft. So up here is the point in the race where everybody attacks. And I was told this by a few of the A group guys. And in my warm-up laps with Eric, he kind of told me an easy way to do this, especially as a bigger guy. This was nice because I can definitely pick up speed on the downhill. He said, use the draft on this downhill and let it carry you forward. And as everybody's in front of you is losing momentum, just punch it. And again, this is what's nice about being in the B field. I could actually try this because in A field, I probably would have been too far back. It probably would have been spread out. I wouldn't have been able to. But I saw I was starting to get towards the front of the group, and so I hit it. 600 watts, and then I'm just holding 400, 500. But you can see there's some gaps are starting to open a little bit. But then Ray hits it, and everybody jumps up. We're all still pretty fresh at this point because it's really only our first real race lap. So I probably shouldn't have hit it there and just saved it and stayed in the group, drafted. But as you can see, there's a gap now opening behind Drew because that effort's starting to feel a little sustained. Everybody was able to punch it quick at first, but how to get an attack to actually stick would be to really keep pushing now over that hill, because if you ease up at the top, people are just going to latch back on, but you really want to get a gap by pushing over. If I was still pushing 300, 400 watts before that turn, that gap definitely could have grown, but I knew it wasn't worth it at this point. Those guys were off the front. Ray's a smaller guy, and Drew and I were tending to pick up a lot of speed on these downhills, so I figured the two of us would be able to bring them back nice and easy. So I let him take the front, just stayed in the draft, took some needed rest after the effort for the little climb. You can see we just fly by these guys. So Drew flicks me. I think he thought that we still had a little gap. I went in front, but I told him, I said, hey, they're on us. There's no real reason to push too hard. He's still pedaling in the downhill. And, we're not really teammates, but we had decided that we might try to work together and get a breakaway if possible. I figured, why not? I've never really done a breakaway up. I'll go in on that with him later. So right now, just figure we'll save some energy. I always do like pedaling a bit on the downhill, unless I'm spinning out. It's like, why not? You pedal your tempo or something, and you're gonna keep a really nice speed going, and there's no reason not to, unless you're behind everybody and you're about to hit them in the wheel. But keep the momentum. You might see that poor little squirrel right around here. I forget exactly where he was, but oh, there he is. Chippy, I think we named him. So I'm just getting into these guys' drafts. There's another little punchy hill coming up right over here. This is a really fun course because there's these little rollers often right before turns. So if you really did want to attack it hard and then attack through the turn, you could definitely find some opportunities to break away. And, you know, looking back on this, I think I was punching it too hard on these, and I was getting on the front pretty much every time we were going through these hills, which maybe wouldn't have been bad if I was working for someone else on my team. If they were sitting, you know, in the middle of the pack and just using the draft, but I was keeping the pace high, that could have been smart. Andy goes off the front here, and I just punched up that hill, so I don't want to work to bring him back. I look back, and there's even a little bit of gap between Greg and I because he was getting some water. But I think at this point I even flicked my elbow, and I was like, look, I'm not going to go get him. I've been sitting on the front, so if somebody wants to bring him back, they can go do it. But if I attacked right now and tried to bridge up to him, I would bring the entire field with me, and that is not what I want to do. If I was sitting on the back, I think I may have tried to bridge up to him. You get up speed, kind of flick around the back of the pack, and you can have that speed differential so you're not bringing everyone up with you. And that was a good attempt right there to do that, because really he got his speed up so that people couldn't go with him. And I had to do an effort because I was sitting on the front and took a little bit too long to respond to that. But so I think, you know, maybe coming to be and wanting to try some of these moves and stuff, I maybe was trying to do too much. Another thing that might have hurt me in the end. I think my normalized power for this race, which was almost a 2-hour race, I think my normalized power was like 20 watts under my FTP. So it was definitely a lot of work. My average wasn't high. I mean, it was like 200 watts or something like that, but with all the surges and little hills where it was hitting it really hard, that normalized power was very high for hour and a half, 2-hour race here. So here, we've got a left to right wind, so I'm trying to stay to the right, and people are doing a better job of being on the correct side of the road this time, but you can see I'm kind of able to slot in a little bit, angular to Greg's wheel to get as much draft as I can. So you can see the pace is a little bit easier here. Greg's taking a drink, and I think it's at this point that I realize I am out of fuel completely, and we still have a whole another lap. So, you know, it kind of goes back to making sure you plan ahead. Don't let what other people are doing change your preparation plans for warm-ups, things like that. And always bring extra fuel. I mean, if you got an extra water bottle or you got an extra gel in your pocket, it's really not going to make the difference between you winning or losing at this level, at least. And but being underfueled, and I mean, I wouldn't say I bonked, but my legs just didn't have anything at the end. Probably wouldn't have changed much because I just overworked them, but had I had an extra gel or my extra bottle with a bunch of carbs in it, I would have had maybe the ability to at least stick with people till a little bit longer. But, you know, so plan ahead. Err on the side of caution. It's better to have extra food and not eat it than to run out and be wishing you had it. So learn from my mistakes. Drew puts in a little dig, but he's on the front, so it's always best if you're going to actually attack, you know, drop back, and then you can pick up that speed differential so that you can actually pass people before they have time to jump on your wheel. When you attack from the front, I mean, you can do it just to kind of test people's legs, see, you know, who might have the energy to make quick jumps, but more than likely you're probably expending more energy than they are because you're taking the wind. So unless you're feeling really good and you just want to kind of check in on other people, probably better to drop back. And Drew smartly just kind of gets off the front, slots back in. I was already hurting, and I figured I don't mind staying fourth wheel. I don't need to move up to third. So I just kind of let him come in. I don't think I really checked back enough to see who was behind me. I really just, this whole race, it was these three guys in front and me, and we just kind of would rotate. All the other guys were just hanging out in the draft, and you can't forget about those guys because, you know, they're hanging out the whole race, saving energy. It doesn't mean that they're not strong enough to pull. It's just that they're playing it smart, and they are resting their legs, keeping their energy high, letting us play around and attack each other. And when it really counts, they're going to have the extra energy to make the sprint at the line. So make sure you're kind of aware and marking who's doing work, who's maybe looking like they're a little tired, like I probably am right now. And especially on times like this where, you know, we're not working that hard. This is a nice easy stretch, and people are kind of taking their time to rest. That's when you should really be going through this stuff in your head. And not every race is going to have these moments where you're going a little bit easier, but there's always some sort of lull. It might not be to the point where you're doing under tempo like I am, but it can't be threshold the entire race unless you're just way underpowered for the group that you're in. This is kind of the finish straight for what would be the sprint on the next lap. Kind of past that automotive place on the right. You want to try to start getting in position, which again for this stretch with the wind coming left to right would be on the right side of the road, and think about where you want to launch your sprint. Can't really see it with the guys in front, but the finish line on the road is marked out, and it's a yellow sign on the right side of the road. So there's a start finish there, and as you can see, the counter just went up to lap 4. Again, that first lap was a neutral lap, so this would be our last race lap. These guys are just kind of testing things out on this little kicker here. We're heading into the tailwind section. Tailwind section is where I usually choose to pull because it's not really that hard, but you're moving so people won't yell at you, and there's also a good downhill up here where I tend to pick up a good amount of speed, again being a bigger rider. So I'll get on the front and just pedal through rather than just letting myself coast, and then people don't tend to yell at you because it does seem like you did some work on the front, but in reality it's pretty minimal work compared to the guys that pull through the headwind. Again, everybody, just take this moment to say like and subscribe if you get anything out of these videos, and please comment so that I can make these videos better. Let me know what you'd like to see. I kind of mentioned in my first video that I would be happy to post them without the commentary if you just want something to stare at while you're on the trainer and not listen to me ramble on. Or if you'd like more of a highlight reel with some commentary and not have the entire race video, just let me know what you're looking for. I know these guys are strong. They've been making the moves the whole race, so I wanted to make sure that I stayed on their wheel especially just knowing that the downhill is coming up, and if I did let myself gap, them working together, they could technically get away. But as long as I stay near, I'll be fine. But you can actually see after behind Drew, we actually did get a gap because he followed me. I'm sure the four of us, had we wanted to work together, we could have gotten away. Which in retrospect, maybe we should have. I mean, from where I was sitting, but I think it worked out just fine for the three of them. Again, this corner is pretty rough. We take it slow, and we still kind of hit some rough stuff and got kicked out a little bit there. We're just talking about that turn being pretty nasty. But that's why it's nice that we kind of went over that in the beginning and made sure to make that more of a neutral turn. It's probably never going to be an area where a race is won or lost. With this course just being so hilly, it's not really a decision maker. I think we're just at this point chatting about Andy being off the front here, and whether we really want to start working to bring him back, or if we think it's just going to kind of happen naturally. Because at this point, we've still got all the hills to go. He's been off there for quite a while, but in sight, and he would have to be working really hard to stay away at this point, but I think we are starting to slowly bring him back. Good effort, though. I mean, it's not easy to stay out there by yourself. So at this point, I'm trying to think, well, how could I win? And knowing that, I came down to B to give some stuff a try that I wouldn't normally try in A, I was thinking that I really am going, the plan is to attack on that climb before the turn on Lennox. And Drew had mentioned that if I attack on that last one, he would try to come with me and we'd work together, stay away.
What do you say, Joe? Lead us to victory.
So that thought's in my mind. But I also know I'm pretty tired at this point. So I'm like, well, if I've got the energy when we get there, I'll give it everything I've got, see what happens. So I kind of stop pulling here, realize I'm sitting on the front, and I don't really want to push it up this hill more than I have to. So I let them attack, and I obviously got to bring up the watts to stay with the group, but I'm not going to be the one setting the pace. Again, I think I just tell Drew to slot in because it kind of helps us both. Gives me more of a draft and makes him not have to go all the way back to the back of the pack to get in line. At this point, I don't want to be on the front or too close to the front, so I'm fine with fourth wheel. we're all just kind of keeping an eye on Andy up there. You can see him in the distance, little dot on the white line. He's not getting any further away at this point, so we're not really working together, other than just periodically guys are taking turns, but we're not trying to bring them back very quickly. Just let them dangle. Pulls off, I'll do a pull. And I do want to bring him back, but I don't want to work too hard, and so I think I try to keep it a little under threshold, kind of bobbing around. But I don't plan on pulling very long because I want to get behind some people before this downhill so that I can try that move where I'm in the draft and then come around. So I cut it and just let them pull ahead. But then I also know I've got to get a little inside them so that I can shoot around. So there was a little gap between Drew and Joe. I fill in there. And then I'm waiting for my momentum to start taking me towards them, and then I'm planning on hitting it. I'm still going 0 watts right now. 300, 400, 500. As it starts to pick up, I decide to hit it hard. 700 watts. I'm not really looking at my power, but I was just trying to keep it steady, so I was trying to, I guess I was keeping it around that between 500 and 700 watts. And it's a 7% grade. It's a pretty good hill. I actually call out to Andy to see if he wants to try to jump on me, but I think he's beat. So the thing is, I kept pushing threshold at the top. I didn't ease off, but I eased for a second after the turn. I'm looking back right here, and I'm like, well, Drew didn't come with me, but I've got a gap, so screw it. So I pick it back up, and I just figure I'm gonna keep it, sweet spot threshold, and see how far I can get. I've never done a solo breakaway, and just curious how it would all be. So I'm actually looking at my watts now. I was not pushing as hard as I was thinking I was, but I don't know if I pick it up or not. I think I was half decided whether I wanted to actually go for this or not. Yeah, I'm starting to pick it up now. So had Drew come with me, maybe we could have done better switching on and off on this downhill. We could have picked up a little bit more speed and gotten a bigger gap by the time the road picks uphill again. but it's hard to say. I mean, I'm sure just like when Andy was off the front, they're just kind of keeping an eye on me. There's still a lot of race to go. If I had a higher FTP and more energy, this might have been dangerous, because I mean, you look at the map up there. There's really just one more little kicker, and then there's the false flat to the finish. So if they weren't gonna work together, which in the whole race nobody really worked that well together. We were just kind of haphazardly taking turns. It could have been a really good race to try a breakaway, but I just don't have it. You can see they're already starting to get a little closer. I know the road's about to pick up here, and I don't have the energy to attack it. And that's what I would have had to hit this really hard if I wanted to stay in front of them, because I know that they're going to hit it. I give it something just so that I'm not standing still when they fly by me. But by no means with the power that I hit that last climb. I look back, I see that they're there. Now I make a big mistake here, and I start chatting with Drew, and he drops back to talk to me, but I was too focused on talking to him, and I actually kind of gapped myself. And I kind of accidentally gapped Drew too, because he dropped back too far to talk to me. But then after this turn, I don't know, I just had done that effort, and I'm really tired, and now I gotta work hard to just get back on the draft. You gotta keep the focus. Make sure you stay in there. Oh, at this point, going another 500 watts, I'm already having thoughts of just not being able to finish, which is really not the mindset you ever want to get in, regardless of how much energy you have left. I think you have to convince yourself that you can make it, because as soon as those thoughts start creeping in, your race is pretty much over. So Greg drops behind me. I know that he's a really strong sprinter, and he's thinking that I am as well. But I'm just thinking, I don't know how long I can hold on. Every time there's even the tiniest little surge, I'm gapping a little bit off Drew's wheel. And then I think at some point up here, I start yelling to Greg that I know that I don't have the energy. I'm trying to flick him through, but he thinks I'm playing games with him. He thinks I want to be on the back to get a sprinter's gap to fly around everybody when it comes to the finish. But in reality, I'm just trying to give him a heads up that I am not long for this race. So I pulled to the left and tried to flick him up. You can see he's smiling. He thinks I'm just playing with him, which is, that's good. I mean, when you get, he really shouldn't trust what people say. I'm not that advanced yet. I'm not going to play games, but I'm not trying to ruin somebody else's race when I know that I'm going to fall off the back of this group pretty soon. I think I'm just watching other people drink from their water bottles, and I'm just really jealous at this point that they have water and they probably have food in there. Although I know Drew's hurting. You can see him holding his leg. I think he was starting to cramp up. It's definitely an important part of racing that I don't really do that often. It's just really analyzing the other racers around you throughout the race, looking at their riding style at the beginning when everybody's fresh, as Drew's punching his quads. That's a sign that he does not have much energy left. So if I were going to sprint, if I had the energy, it maybe would have been a smart thing to try to get in front of Drew. You can see Greg smiling. I think he's just thinks I'm playing chicken, trying to get him to jump up there. I try to close it here. It's over 300 watts. And then I just yelled at him. I'm just like, no, I'm for real, man. I'm done. He closed it with ease. So that's basically my race. Those guys go off, and Greg does exactly what he was planning on doing. He hangs on the back and jumps around everybody and takes first. And then I think Will was a new guy, and if I screwed up your name, I'm sorry. I think he took second, Drew third, maybe. But yeah, it was a really fun race, and I enjoyed being in B's with these guys. I know I didn't finish this one, but I think it has a lot to just overworking before, not fueling, and hopefully this weekend will be a different story. So appreciate you watching. Again, feel free to comment, and please like and subscribe. We'll see you next week.